Hey, how's it going, everybody? Shaun here from Zoobox, and today we're going to give you a little extra video, a little extra late night video. Yeah, it's almost 12:30 at night as I'm recording this. Early in the morning, late at night, however you want to look at it. And today, I want to talk about, or tonight rather, I want to talk about Split Second, and in particular, this Blu-ray release of Split Second. Now, Split Second, it's kind of like one of these lost 90s action sci-fi gems. It's one of these underrated movies. These movies you don't really hear about too often. I mean, if you're involved in genre circles, you're involved in any type of film communities, you may see it pop up from time to time, but often it's just kind of forgotten. I never hear people talk about it. And I mean, I've heard people talk about it recently because this release was imminent, so people kind of put it back in the zeitgeist. And maybe like when Rutger Hauer passed away, it kind of put it back in people's minds because people were just going back through his filmography and watching some of his more off the beaten path movies. And Split Second is definitely one of those. It's kind of a schlocky B type movie, science fiction, horror, thriller, but that actually has a lot of legs, in my opinion, and it actually influenced a lot of things that kind of come after it. So let's get into the particulars. It was directed by Tony Maylam. Well, he directed most of it. Apparently, he quit during part of the production before they finished it, and somebody else had to step in. But his name's on the movie. It's written by Gary Scott Thompson, who's become kind of a successful writer. Apparently, I think he wrote the first Fast and Furious movie, or maybe the first few of them. It stars Rutger Hauer, Kim Cattrall, Alistair Duncan, Michael J. Pollard, Alan Armstrong, Pete Postlethwaite, Ian Dury, Tony Steadman, Stephen Hartley, and others. The plot synopsis is: in a flooded future London, Detective Harley Stone hunts a serial killer who murdered his partner and has haunted him ever since. He soon discovers what he is hunting might not be human. This is a crazy, weird movie. It's like a neo-noir detective thriller where a guy is hunting down a serial killer that's a supernatural alien creature. Like it says in there, it killed his partner. It's a buddy cop movie. It's a populist action movie. It's a cool science fiction movie. It's got a lot going for it. And it's interesting because it actually takes place in the year 2008. So this was made in the early 90s, came out in 1992. But the story itself actually takes place in 1998, or in 2008 rather. And it is set around a world where global warming is kind of taken over and everywhere is kind of flooded. It takes place in London, and it's become kind of like Venice. Everybody gets around on these kind of watercraft, boats, jet skis, also those kind of jeeps with the snorkels on them. Everybody has to drive around in those because most places the water comes up too high. So it's got a lot of interesting things it was definitely shot on a budget. So they're using a lot of like kind of industrial areas. They're using warehouses that are kind of repurposed for things, but it gives the movie this cool kind of dystopian texture. It feels very tactile. The movie has like a grit and a grime to it that you can kind of feel. It kind of emanates off the screen. The movie, it's shot pretty well. I think the cinematographer probably did the best he could. But it's got a lot of things that you will recognize from other filmmakers that kind of came after this movie. Apparently, David Fincher cited this movie as one of his inspirations for the look of Seven. And if you watch Split Second, you can actually see that. You can actually see where one grows from the other. And it's kind of a cool thing. It's kind of it's a cool thing that somebody that became David Fincher, actually saw Split Second and appreciated it. It's very cool. I've always liked that about David Fincher, actually, just as a side tangent. He's a film fan. He likes a lot of weird things. If you ever hear him just talk about movies and the kinds of movies he likes, he talks about stuff like Split Second. Not specifically, but just those types of things. He has a reverence for kind of trashy movies because he's kind of king of the prestige trash, in my opinion, David Fincher. So cool little tidbit there. It had an interesting production history as well. It was originally, I believe, called Pentagram, and it was written with an eye for Harrison Ford, which is interesting because Rutger Hauer obviously starred with Harrison Ford in Blade Runner. And it's got a Blade Runner type of feel to it, right? Because it's science fiction, it's noirish, a lot of shadows. Just the look of the movie, you could say, is like, oh, this is like a low rent Blade Runner. Obviously, it's not on the scale of Ridley Scott's Blade Runner. It doesn't have that much attention to detail. It doesn't look that cool. And when I was watching it, and I didn't mean no disrespect to the director, Tony Maylam, because I think he did a great job with what he had. I couldn't help but think, like, oh, it would have been really cool if, like, Ridley Scott or James Cameron of this era had done this movie. I mean, I really feel like this is something they would just, like, absolutely fucking crush. But the movie is so much fun. Coming back to it, like, I just had a great time revisiting this. I'd revisited actually the around when Rutger Hauer passed away. And if you have an Amazon Prime account, it's actually on Amazon Prime. You can go watch it for free. It's not this transfer. This transfer is a HD. This is the first time it's ever been on Blu-ray, I think. They say something about it being like from a 4K, restored and color graded in 4K from the 35mm Intra Negative. Well, it's not a great looking movie. Even the transfer itself is not great looking. Granted, it looks better than it ever has. I will say that. It definitely looks better than the Amazon Prime version, because that's where I watched it a couple years ago. I rewatched it a couple years ago. But it still doesn't look great. I wouldn't say, unless you're kind of like me, a weirdo or a diehard fan, I'm not sure this would be worth picking up for that. But it does have a lot of cool extra features. I have not gotten through all of them yet. I watched one of them that had one of the producers and kind of the co-lead of the movie, Alistair Duncan. He plays kind of like the comic relief, the kind of the character that goes through a little bit of an arc. He becomes a little bit of a badass. He's kind of a straight-laced, pencil-pushing detective that gets teamed up with Harley Stone, Rutger Hauer's Harley Stone, and he kind of Rutger Hauer turns him into a badass by the end of the movie. But and it was really fun. It was a really fun conversation. They just kind of reminisced broadly about making the movie and the experience and the casting and Rutger Hauer and the creature effects and all sorts of stuff. So that was really interesting. And then there's other stuff. There's like a featurette about the score. There's a featurette about like the cinematography, which I actually am really looking forward to watching. Creature effects, etc. It does not have an interview with it doesn't have a current interview. I'm not sure if Stephen Norrington's alive. Stephen Norrington, the guy who directed Blade and League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, which is a movie that apparently had such a bad time making, he decided never to direct the movie again. But Blade is fucking awesome, though. So much respect. Much respect for Blade. We don't talk ill about the first Blade around this house. In this house, we don't talk bad about Blade. But he was the head supervisor of all the creature effects, and he did all the main designs for that stuff. So that was pretty cool. Just a cool little weird connection. I guess the first Blade only came out, right? It only came out like 5 years after this, if you put it into context of time, which is kind of wild when you think about it. But and there's a lot of stuff like that in this movie. A lot of these weird little connections, a lot of these faces and people that you'll recognize, and makes this kind of cool for me. And it also has the Japanese cut of the movie, which is like 5 minutes longer. It's got an SD version of the Japanese cut, and they couldn't find any other version other than this VHS copy, I guess. So it has like hard coded into it the Japanese subs. You watch it with Japanese subs, like if you were pirating something, perhaps. Sometimes that happens, at least I've been told. I've been told that can happen sometimes. But for me this is worth picking up. It came out this past Tuesday. I'm very excited to have it in my collection, actually. And just more on the movie itself, it just creates such a unique, interesting kind of noirish future world that it feels idiosyncratic. It feels coherent and cohesive. It feels unique. It's got some fun performances. The script is fun. Like I said, I kind of like lost track a little bit. Sorry. Coming off of COVID and a little tired. But lost track of what I was saying before. This was actually started as a movie called Pentagram. and it was more dealing with like explicitly occult things. So the movie ends up being like about supernatural stuff, but apparently the original script was about the occult and occult rituals and cops looking for a cult. Well, around the same time, a movie that we talked about not that long ago, it's weird that how the world's kind of synchronicity of life, the first Power had come out. And the producers were like, well, can we change the script around a little bit? We change it around a little bit to make it different. So they took the setting from L.A., they put it in London, they make it futuristic, they change the paradigm of what's going on. And I will say this: while it is fun and entertaining, and it has like kind of this populist bent to it, because it's supposed to be a crowd pleaser, it's got even some one-liners that are, to varying degrees of success, and it does get a little convoluted by the end. I don't think it does a great job of explaining some of the particulars of the story. Like Rutger Hauer's story, the part of the story is that his partner gets killed by this thing a few years back. He's kind of maimed by it, gets scratched by it, and this gives him, for some reason, like a psychic connection, and he can hear its heartbeat. You can hear its heartbeat in his mind, in his mind's ear, whatever you want to call it. So whenever this serial killing alien supernatural being that apparently is trying to eat people's souls, that's why he goes after their hearts, he knows they're there. And it never really does a good job of explaining that, other than like, well, you survived. You got maimed and you lived, and now you have this psychic connection to this creature. Doesn't really make any much sense. The character arcs for the characters are actually not bad. Rutger Hauer is more kind of static. He's more kind of just this action hero guy, but he's a lot of fun. It's a fun performance. It's really Alistair Duncan's character who really gets a little bit more growth as a character. He actually changes in kind of the way that you'd be familiar with if you'd watch the buddy movie with, like, the loose cannon and the straight-laced guy, like Lethal Weapon-esque, I mean, well, maybe not specifically Lethal Weapon. Maybe that's a little bit more like, I don't know, maybe 48 Hours or something. Where it's like, they don't change who they are, but they loosen up a little bit, They kind of see the path of the crazy guy a little bit. They start understanding him. This one takes a little bit step further. He basically wants to become him at the end of the movie. It's kind of weird. It is kind of weird. It feels a little abrupt. This hard character pivot seems a little out of left field, But the movie is so much fun just watching it. And even like the moment to moment, but also the taste it leaves in your mouth after, or in your brain, whatever you want to call it, in your eyeballs. It leaves such a good impression at the end of the movie because it's so much fun. And it's always kind of reinventing itself, and it's always giving you an interesting new dynamic to think about, whether that's through the introduction of newer characters or that's just because of a plot twist. Because while it does get kind of silly and contrived because of the sort of lack of explanation, they just don't do a good job putting the pieces together at the end. And I think if you had taken more time with some of this stuff, maybe they could have. But it's like I said, it's easy to forgive. And it's easy to forgive because it's fun to watch, but it's also like you understand when you're watching it. You're like, oh, I'm watching like a low budget science fiction movie. But you can see the sincerity and the earnestness behind the scenes. Like, these people were trying to make a cool, fun movie. And you can feel that, and you get that, and you get a sense of enjoyment because of that. Just on that on its own. Like I said, I don't think this is something that everybody should run out and buy a copy of this. I'm not saying you should. It's a little pricey. I think I ended up paying like $23 for it, which to me that's worth it. Don't tell my wife. Just keep that between me and you. But the fact that it's on Amazon Prime and most people have Amazon Prime, I would give it a shot. If you're a genre fan, if you like alien type movies, you like cop movies, you like procedurals, buddy cop movies, science fiction movies, give it a fucking shot. I think you might actually be surprised at how much you're going to enjoy it. It ain't Shakespeare. It's a little chintzy. It's a little kitschy at times, I would say. But it has this earnestness about its creation. that I think really kind of transcends its circumstances sometimes. And Rutger Hauer's awesome. I love Rutger Hauer. I can't get enough of Rutger Hauer. I could watch Rutger Hauer read the fucking phone book, to be honest with you. I've seen almost everything he's done. I don't think I've seen like some of those his earlier movies, like Turkish Delight, the stuff that he did with Paul Verhoeven. He's only did one American movie with Paul Verhoeven, was Flesh and Blood, which I've only seen once a long time ago. I've been meaning to revisit it. I think that's actually also on Amazon Prime, if I'm not mistaken. But he is awesome. I've always liked him a lot. He's always an interesting actor, making interesting decisions as an actor. He had a slew of really fun movies back in like the 80s and early 90s, like Blind Fury. What else has he got here? Wanted, Dead or Alive's super fun. Wedlock is fun. One of my all-time favorite movies, The Hitcher. It's one of my favorite Rutger Hauer performances is The Hitcher. He's like the mysterious serial killer. What else we got here about this movie? Yeah. It features Knights in White Satin a bunch of times. It also has a version by Giorgio Moroder, the guy who put together that kind of not great version of Metropolis in the 80s. Which I also did a video on not that long ago. It's so weird. This weird synchronicity. Everything falling together. The number 27. It's everywhere. I guess it had two scores, but because it was in kind of sat in post production for so long, they end up scrapping that score. But the person that did the score was Wendy Carlos, and she did the score for Clockwork Orange, The Shining, Tron. But apparently whatever she did wasn't good enough, which sucks that it's kind of lost the time that I don't think we're ever going to get a chance to see what that score sounded like. I'm just curious what her take on it would have been, because I think the score as is okay. Like, it's your typical low budget science fiction action kind of synth score. Some of it is much better than other parts of it. Stephen Parsons, he's actually got a special feature on this Blu-ray, and I'm looking forward to hearing what he has to say about it, to be honest with you, because I didn't hate it and I didn't think it was bad. It's not bad in the way that if you've seen a lot of movies from this era, there'd be just kind of this weird unintentional goofiness to a lot of the scores of the era. And there's only a few people that really got away from that. I would say John Carpenter scores generally can avoid that kind of stuff, because he does his own scores, but he doesn't have like this weird film score sensibility. So he's not trying to balance it out and make a broad thing. He's like, Carpenter's so specific about what he intends to do with the score and the types of things. He's not trying to do like kind of these big broad scores. That's also because he's the director and usually is a co-writer on the movie. So he has very specific intentions. He knows what he's trying to achieve in a scene. So I'm sure that helps out. There are moments where the score I think works really well. Kind of reminded me a little bit of some of Terminator 2, the score for Terminator 2. Got a little Terminator 2 vibes from this movie. But yeah, it's a fucking rad movie. I'm so happy that I own it now, and that I'm gonna watch it. I was watching it, and then when it was, as soon as it was over, I was like, oh my god, I'm gonna be like obsessed with this movie for the next couple months. I'm gonna try to get somebody to get obsessed with it so we can do a proper, like, as Zoobox goes to the movies. I would love to tear this apart with somebody. So if anybody's out there, I don't care if you're some kind of random fucking person, if you're somebody that watches these videos regularly, if you're one of the guests that's already been on the show, Dan, Paul, Danimal, if you're willing to invest some of yourself into Split Second, it's on Amazon Prime. I don't require you to buy this. Let me know. I'd love to talk about this with somebody, because I think there's actually a lot to get into. There's some interesting subtext stuff. I mean, a lot of it is built on these kind of kind of like cop movie cliches, buddy cop movie cliches, and it knows it. It's got a subversiveness to it. It's self-aware. It knows to make fun of itself a little bit. It knows it knows what it is, I guess, right? So while it does take everything seriously, it also does feel like it tips its hat at you a little bit and kind of clues you into like, yeah, we know we're kind of dealing in cliches, and we're dealing with things that are coming off a little silly. And I think the picture is actually better for it, that it does have a little bit of a sense of humor, both in just because of the one-liners, but also in a meta sense. It is aware of what it is, like I said. And that is oftentimes can be a distraction in movies like this, but I think it works really well here because I think the script is actually better than most scripts of this kind of movie that came out at this time, you know? Because this was definitely something. I mean, I had seen it when I was a kid. Because I remember, which I have the old poster, the old cover. They had a reversible cover. So I remember seeing this cover, like going to the movie store when I was a kid. I think I remember my dad renting it because I actually remembered a lot of this movie. And I probably maybe saw it sometime down the line, maybe when I was a teenager or something on late night cable or something like that, you know. But I definitely wasn't super familiar with it, but I recognized a lot of the story in the movie. And I wonder if some of that too is just because it actually did have kind of an influence on a lot of the stuff that came after it. You know, it didn't do great. It also didn't do terrible either. It was somewhere in the middle there. Like apparently it bombed in certain larger markets because it came out the same weekends that the LA riots started in America. And so that kind of hindered the movie's performance as riots are one to do. I guess they kind of dodged the bullet with the shit going on nowadays with the pandemic. They can blame the pandemic. They don't have to deal with talking about the riots. Yeah, so I think it underperformed a little bit, but causing it to kind of being forgotten. It was probably a cable thing. It probably was on cable pretty quick after it came out. It's like that movie we talked about a week or so ago, the First Power, the Lou Diamond Phillips movie that they had to change the script so it wouldn't be too much alike. Like that movie was on like network TV, like UPN, like a couple years after it came out. I feel like Split Second was probably in there. Although Split Second you probably couldn't get away with showing because it's a little too gory. The gore factor is definitely there. It's got some great effects work, some fun effects work, effective effects works. I like the creature. It's like a cross between Venom and the Xenomorph from Alien. And then with some sort of weird psychic ability. But it's a fun creature design. And I think they do a pretty good job with it. They kind of treat it like Jaws, where you only kind of see it in its full glory at the end of the movie. And most of the time it's just in shadow, or you see a claw or its teeth or whatever. It definitely looks like a rubber puppet monster. It's not as effectively hidden or utilized as, say, Ridley Scott did in Alien, because that was, it's a masterful execution of cinematography, basically hiding the suit and only showing you terrifying glimpses. I wouldn't say this does that good of a job. There definitely is a can-do amateurishness about this that I kind of liked. I kind of appreciated. I respected it. All right, I've been rambling for way too long now. So if you're a movie collector and you're a genre person, definitely worth picking up. But if you're just a curious person, it's on Amazon Prime. I'll try to remember to leave a link to the Amazon Prime version in the description if you want to check it out. All right, everybody, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. If you'd like to know more about Zoobox, if you want to keep up to date with everything Zoobox Nation, we got a lot of fun stuff, a lot of memeing going on. The presidential elections heating up, so we're making goofy videos and having a good time. Make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel, hit the like button, do all that good stuff, hit the bell. Make sure you don't ever miss a second of Zoobox. But there's a bunch of links in the description for Facebook, for Instagram, for my personal Twitter. Also, if you would like to make a recommendation for one of these daily videos, whether it's like a Blu-ray review, a movie, whatever, throw it in the comments. Even if it's the topic for our regular show, we do kind of a pop culture analysis, cultural news, current events, talk about fitness, we talk about our lives, we just talk about kind of bullshit, talk about whatever. That's the regular show. It's just called Zoobox, and a podcast about nonsense. So yeah, enjoy. Have a good day, everybody. I'm going to bed. It's late.